We know it's hard after lunch, but this should be a lively discussion. It's called Developing Future Leaders, but we're going to hit on themes all related to workforce. And so again, I'm Shane Conklin, Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities and Campus Services at UMass Amherst. Sharing here on the panel, to my left, Sean Childers, Assistant Vice President for Operations at Texas Tech. In the middle, John D'Angelo, Vice President of Facilities Management at Northwestern University. And on the end, Peter Krawczyk, the Vice President of Facilities, Real Estate, and Auxiliary Services for the University of Delaware. So thank you all for being here today to listen to us, talk about some of the things we're experiencing with workforce, and also try to engage the audience in some of the best practices that you have. So in researching, thinking about all of the higher ed facilities issues and hearing the session this morning, we have so many competing challenges in facilities management, and workforce issues seem to resonate throughout. In higher education, we know the real estate we hold is very valuable, but our staff resource that we manage and supervise is the largest support area probably on any campus. I know certainly in our campus it's the largest. We're constantly looked at for budget reductions. On our campus, we've returned $3.2 million of base budget to the campus the last 3 fiscal years so that the campus could reallocate that to other strategic initiatives. So we definitely have a drain on our resource. Our facilities workforce we know is aging. Someone mentioned that this morning in the shouting out of other facilities related issues. Aging workforce as a significant challenge that we're all facing, and so we're going to be hitting that today. We know that the new labor pool doesn't seem to be there to try to rehire skilled trades positions. They don't seem interested, possibly, the new generations of joining that kind of trade. We have high costs when we turn over positions, the recruitment, the training of new staff. And so we've found cases where then we have to resort to simply rehiring or promoting existing staff who might be the best technician but might not be the best manager or leader for our organizations. So it's critical that we all think very critically about these workforce issues so that we can all be as successful as possible. So we're going to be discussing workforce across 3 themes today. The first is going to be attracting and recruiting new talent. We're going to hit that subject across the board and also have the audience have an opportunity to share some of their best practices. And then we're going to move into retaining quality employees as the second theme. And the last, it really starts to get at the developing future leaders, but how to improve our staff growth and try to really create a culture of leadership across our organizations. So with that, we're going to start on the subject of attracting and recruiting new talent. And so just going to start to the panel, starting with Sean to my left, and just a general question about what techniques you're using at your campus to successfully attract and recruit new talent.
Great. Well, first I want to thank Hannah for the great weather outside. I don't know who in the room brought the great weather, but we sure do appreciate it in Texas. Thank you very much. We've kind of like the rest of the country, it's been bad, but I really enjoy coming to these conferences because it always amazes me, even though we don't talk for a whole year, when we get together in these events, we always seem to have the same opportunities or challenges on our campus that we're kind of going through. And I like how Nina said it earlier, we're all in a self-preservation mode. We're all trying to think outside the box. We're really trying to figure out how we can be successful in a declining population of people that want to come to work with us for one reason or another. If you're in a Texas area right now, you know that unemployment is extremely low. There's a lot of opportunities out there for even kids graduating from college right now. I was visiting with one of my directors the other day, and he said, yeah, my son just graduated from Harvard. He went to work for Microsoft up in Seattle, and he's making a lot more than I am. And I know how much the director makes, and he makes a lot of money. So for a graduate to walk out and make 6 figures, that's a very, very impressive workforce out there. And I'm very happy for them, but it does create challenges for us. So a couple of things that we've done on our campus to kind of think outside the box and get people interested to come work with us is we've kind of flipped that model of, well, have you turned in an application? If you're interested, you know, you do all the work. We've flipped that and we've started calling people. if we even hear of somebody that's in between jobs, or if we hear of anybody that's looking for a job, maybe they're disgruntled where they're at, we actually give them a call and we kind of start reaching out to them and say, hey, we've got these positions open. Or if somebody applies for a position and it doesn't quite fit where they're at, we call them back, we visit with them and say, hey, we have some other positions we would like you to kind of to look at and apply for. And when we're doing that, to be kind of a little more aggressive, is we're not always putting their skill set at the top. Now, I do agree engineering and some other areas, you need a certain level of skill set, but we're kind of looking at the attitude, aptitude, and desire to come work. You know, if you can find those in this kind of an economy, you can, in general terms, teach the other skills that they need to have. So we're really trying to think outside the box. Another thing is we've really taken on job fairs. We join the city job fair, we join the county job fair. If we hear of a company or something going out of business, we call them and we join in their job fair. But the latest one that we've had pretty good success with is we use temporary services to kind of supplement our labor force. We're starting to do job fairs with our temporary agency that we have a contract with, and we've really been successful in that area. And then the last area is we've created alliances with our local high schools and community colleges to try to recruit. We get involved with them. Our HVAC guys go and speak at their refrigeration classes. Our steam shop guys go and teach at their welding shops, just to build those alliances and let people know that we have jobs out there. So we're really trying to flip that model and be kind of like the headhunters that are calling probably a lot of us or our members on our teams on a regular basis, and we're being that model at Texas Tech. So
Great insights, John.
Sure. So a couple things, starting macro and working our way down to a couple of programs I'm really proud of. Chicago area, we lost about 30,000 trades jobs with the market downturn back in 2009, and they've really never come back. If you go to Engineering News Record E&R, you'll see Chicago is currently the second most expensive city to build in. And with large construction programs, most of the tradespeople I see show up with license plates that say Indiana or Iowa or Wisconsin. So we've got a larger, besides just my own workforce building, a larger issue that we're trying to address in the greater Chicagoland area. Internally, probably like most people in the audience, about half of my workforce is either retirement eligible or will be retirement eligible within the next 5 years. And we're going from a workforce that really had come in, paid their dues. I gave away a 60-year PIN earlier this year. I've got a lot of 40-year plus employees, to a much more mobile workforce than the millennials. So we're trying to change the way we recruit, much the way that Sean talked about. One of the micro things that I'm really proud of is our Northwestern's ad campaign is "and" is in our DNA. And that really resonated well with me. So we try and find things that we can solve by tying them together. One of the big things we had about 3 or 4 years ago, I think we were #1 in the country for worst town-gown relations, which is not a good place you want to be on that particular list. So how do we deal with workforce and town gown and combine the two together? We came up with a couple of programs. One is the Skilled Trades Program. We have a very socioeconomically diverse town in Evanston, and where our Chicago campus is as well. So we worked with the town and we found a pool of people that either had tried college and it wasn't for them, or they just really didn't want to try college. They wanted to get into something. We're a very heavy union town, and they couldn't get into the unions. So we worked with our unions, we worked with the town, and we brought in just 6 at a time, 6 at a cohort, for fully paid, full benefit apprenticeship program in our trades. And our commitment to them was, if you work hard and you learn over the course of the year, at the end we'll stay with you and we'll make sure that you get a job within the trade that you studied. So that first cohort was 3 years ago. 4 of the 6 worked really hard, so hard that my chief electrician, my chief mechanic fought for them to come in, and so we found positions for them and hired them. The other two didn't work quite as hard, but we stayed up with our commitment, and we found local contractors. One was a flooring contractor, one was an HVAC contractor, and so they're still gainfully employed in there. The second cohort, all 6 were hired on, and then the third cohort, all 6 were hired on. It's been a program that's been a lot of fun. We do more than just the basic apprenticeship, basic skills training. We do personal finance. In a lot of cases, we have to go in and teach some remedial basic management skills, basic pre-supervisor skills. And from our first cohort, we have one of those employees that is now in our full-on supervisor and management training. So it's been a lot of fun. Other anchor institutions, hospitals, and other universities are now adopting that same program. One of the other things that we did, and Sean covered a little bit, is not only outreach through our local high schools, but we helped the city create the Mayor's Summer Youth Program. And every summer we bring 50 local high school students between their junior and senior year, in rare cases between their senior year in college, in for basic skilled trades positions, summer help positions. I think originally it started where they were primarily doing grounds maintenance. Most of those young men and women aren't really looking for a career in grounds maintenance, so we expanded it into other trades areas, and we've been able to develop much more of a desire to go into either a technical major in college, if that's where they're bound, or to look into some of the full-time technical trades programs that we have. So those are two of the things we're doing to help create a new workforce.
That's great, John. We at UMass have something along the lines of bringing in local community members. It's a community works program that's not run by facilities, but on our campus to help bring trades, younger staff who might be interested in trades, especially females, minorities, from some of the cities that are about a half an hour to 20 minutes outside of our campus area, both to contractors, but also we've partnered with them to bring them to the campus, and that's been successful. Great, thanks, John. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We're fortunate on our campus. We really don't have an issue at the moment with labor shortages. So our focus tends to be a little bit different. While we employ many of the same strategies that you've heard previously, we do with the temporary agencies as a way to really sort of test an employee before we decide whether to try to bring them on or not. We obviously work with our union workforce and the union, labor unions to make sure that we can have a continual pool developing. But the one thing that we've really focused on more and more is looking at what we already have. We're sort of thinking along the lines that we estimate our success rate in a new hire is about 50-50, quite honestly. And then we sort of layer on that this idea that about 20% of our complete staff is probably the stars, the people you really want to retain. So if you do the math, your chances are 1 in 10 that a new employee is really going to be that star that you want. So our focus is more on the people that we have and how to train them and how to really effectively grow that ability and that knowledge, because we think we have a better success rate the lower in the workforce range that we hire, rather than if we try to bring in somebody more mid-range or possibly even upper range. So that's, even though we have very, very similar strategies of what you've heard previously, I think that's the one thing that I would just add to this part of the conversation.
Okay, great. Let's turn it over to the audience, in part just because I want to be able to throw this and test my accuracy. But what best practices do you have on your campuses on attracting and recruitment within facilities areas? Yeah, John.
Wow, that was a really good throw. I like that. So at RIT, we're working with New York State and actually are doing very similar to what you're doing at Delaware, that we've got using our own employees and doing an apprenticeship program to bring them into skilled trades, because we just can't find the people to hire off campus. The other thing we're using is a lot of what APPA has to offer in terms of training supervisors. So I'm not just worried about the skilled trades folks at this point. I'm worried about, I think my number was 80% of my supervisors that I have right now will be gone in the next 5 years. And so where does that leadership, and how do I train that next group of leaders? And I agree with you that I'd rather train people we already know and we already know about to be that next leader. So we're developing that program as well.
Great, yeah, and this is not all about the trades. Certainly, we have a few senior level positions that we're going to start searching for, and had some conversations with others already about the national trends on trying to have people relocate from, pick up their lives and move for even a senior level position is challenging these days. Great. Who else? Right behind you.
Something we're planning on right now, doing analysis to try to bring in an apprentice program at University of Vermont. And I'm trying to convince my boss to front load like about 10 to 15 positions with the anticipation of people retiring, and look at the break-even point maybe 6 years from now. So invest maybe 300, 400, 500,000 now, and hopefully when people do retire, that higher paid position will leave, and now you'll have someone mid-range maybe. So hopefully it works out. In a couple of weeks, I'm gonna have a plan together, and I think it's a way to at least, because it's all about the position lines, and we're always under the budget cuts too. So how do you front load a project and then have a payback on human resource activities instead of just a project? So.
Sure, that's great. Yeah, at UMass we have updated some positions because through time there's been a sentiment that you can never get a job at UMass because it's heavily unionized, and so you have to pick from the existing staff first. So it felt like people could never penetrate the employment of the university. And so we've been trying to take measures to create positions, opportunities through apprenticeships, or create a logical structure of a position description in various shops and areas so that the entry levels are truly attracting people from the outside. And then there's a logical progression based on enhancements of qualifications and experience for internal promotions. Peter?
I want to build on what Peter mentioned. Great presentation, by the way, but I think that the key point is that we're not seeing a huge issue of getting millennials to join the workforce. We're not seeing a huge issue of mid-managers coming on board, but they do need help. They need training. And so we've talked a little about deferred maintenance this morning. I hope someday we're not talking about deferred professional development. And I've heard that counter argument on deferred professional development that, gee whiz, what if you train them and they leave? And my argument back to that, what if we don't train them and they stay? So I think it's important that we make those investments. So kudos to those that are trying to make those investments.
Yeah, outstanding. Maybe that's a good segue actually into the next subject. Unless there was someone else, did you want to comment? Or you're just playing with that? Okay.
And so I caught it.
That's a good segue actually, Peter, into the next, which is how to retain the employees, because I think training and that kind of engagement with the employee is critical to that. So really the next theme that we're moving into is once we find highly qualified employees, what can we do to try to keep them? And here we'll start in reverse order. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you for your comment, because it's a good segue, I think, to what I plan on discussing in this segment. So I think we always can think about recognition, saying thank you, empowering employees, those sorts of things. But for me, I wanted to do something more concrete, of a way of telling our employees, you really have the opportunity to, and as we say, to lead. This is really what we're discussing today. Leading, meeting, you're having people follow what you do. So we've done 3 things that we're implementing in the last 2 years. The first one is I'm really cross-training people throughout the organization. I'll give you one example. We're currently in the midst of purchasing an 880 unit apartment complex that was a P3, has been in private hands, and now we're going to be absorbing it into the university 15 years before the agreement was scheduled. So I've put together a steering committee to say, let's go investigate this complex, let's see what conditions it's in. We know how private builders tend to build compared to we do. Let's see how this works. I had to select a leader of that group. I'm also the university architect, so it seems like I would be a logical choice. I did not want to lead that group. I wanted to use it as an opportunity to somebody on the staff. So I had every director nominate a minimum of one person who they thought would be a good choice to lead this group. This group is multidisciplinary, cuts across student life, dining, facilities, all these areas. And then I interviewed the people and I selected the parking director. So all the facilities people here are probably shivering in their seats saying, how can you have a parking director leading an effort of assessing an 880 unit apartment complex? But I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for that person, and also a message to the organization that there are opportunities for you outside of your unit, that you can actually explore things. So that's the first thing. The second thing I've also done is I've created what's called an internship program of a different kind. I've offered to any employee in my area to work with me as an intern, to follow me around. I assign them tasks. Whatever they do, they know it's above their normal duties. They haven't been pulled out of their normal duties. And in this case, the person who I selected is the assistant director of the financial services. He's a CPA. Now, you would think that actually, well, that means that he's going to be looking at the numbers. He's actually leading our strategic planning effort. I've put him in charge of leading our area strategic planning effort. So again, I'm trying to identify the people that really have talent, and sometimes talents they haven't been able to express, and give them the opportunity.
That's great. At UMass, something similar. We have been trying to focus on the mid-level managers, trying to really get them involved in things that maybe otherwise the senior staff were participating in. So recently we were able to send a few staff to a Six Sigma and Lean training, high-intensity course to then come back and be kind of a rapid response unit who could work actually around the whole campus. So there's a cohort of people, and we sent a few of our kind of mid-level customer service managers, and the initial reports are really outstanding. We look forward to more coming out of that. John, on retaining employees.
Sure, on retaining employees, I got lucky, and this is going to sound a little bit strange. I inherited a workforce with really low morale. So a lot of the basic needs were not being met. And in just meeting those needs, you got much more of a magnified effect, not just on morale, but on retention. Everybody wants to be part of an organization where they get a chance to contribute. And having the opportunity to celebrate the victories as well as focusing in on the things that are not quite victories yet, I think is the part that we all could do a lot better job at. We tend to go from crisis to crisis, and the reality is no crisis has ever ended the world yet, and if you solve that crisis, you just get handed three more. So finding the time to celebrate the victories, whether that's do handwritten birthday cards home to, I send it to their home address so that their spouses and kids can see the little handwritten thank you for everything that you've done, and oh, by the way, happy birthday, hope you get a chance to celebrate, to some of the bigger things. On the shop side, they weren't really seeing the senior leadership team. So we make it a point to always be out in the spaces, go out and shovel snow with the team, go out on a couple of service calls with the team, go inspect the mechanical rooms from the vice president level. They weren't used to that, and at first they were a little afraid. Now they use it as an opportunity to say, hey, if we did this instead of that, and as long as we're willing to listen, we find a lot of those great ideas. So there's a lot more excitement. We were a little bit lucky at Northwestern. There was a decision made about a year ago that the entire staff at the university would go through an engagement survey. First time that the university had ever done that. For those who have done engagement surveys before, whether Gallup or others, you know that primarily blue-collar organizations tend to fare a little bit worse, whether it's the overt honesty of the typical blue-collar respondent to the surveys, or whether it's a little bit of gamesmanship by people that are a little bit more sophisticated in taking surveys. We had an 83% response rate, which beat the university's overall response rate, even though about 3/4 of my staff doesn't have access to a workstation. And our engagement scores not only beat the university overall, but we beat, in fact, first time we ever did it, and we're in the 90th percentile for facilities organizations. So the small stuff that we did on retainage is listening, giving people the availability to talk, making people feel special when they are special. And once you start to look for those opportunities, you find that there are really a lot of opportunities to celebrate victories. So retaining people is really, from my perspective, an and with dealing with morale and engagement. They're all hand in hand.
Yeah, great. Sean, go ahead.
You know, I think retaining really goes back to what Andy said a little bit earlier, and it's investing in our people. You know, your people really, people that work with you, and I think sometimes we lose that. The people that work with us and make us successful, they want to feel like we care about them and that we have their back. So many times we're quick to say, well, that was so-and-so that did that or so-and-so, when sometimes they just want to know that we have their back. So we've really stepped back and try to show more value and appreciation. One, through training. We offer all kinds of training, even life skills training. We've seen in our custodial area where we did an English as a second language class. A young lady went through that program, actually went on to get her GED, and is now a supervisor in one of our areas. So just that kind of investment in different people. Another one is retirees that we have. You know, as people are starting to kind of retire or get close to retirement, we're identifying those, we're developing somebody right behind them, and then we're offering those individuals other positions within the organization, whether that be an inspector or an estimator or our preventative maintenance oversight. You know, something that we don't lose that institutional knowledge, but we actually move it around and train or coach younger staff to know exactly what they're looking at, to know where they're looking, because you know those 30 or 40-year employees, they can go, oh, over in this building, if you're cold on room 501, you just go to this thermostat over here and tap it twice, and it'll work. I don't know what's wrong with it, just tap it twice, but it'll work, and she'll be so happy, she'll bake you cookies next time you come through the building. You know, they know all that, and that's important because that's our customer relation that we want them to have out there. And I think the last part of it is life skills. You know, sometimes we get so focused on just work. You know, we do the appreciation and the awards closets and the lunches and all that other, but sometimes it's life skills. We have Microsoft classes. We come in and teach them how to use Excel and Word, and we have checkbook classes. They can come in and learn how to do their finances. You know, going on with what John said a while ago, it's just people want to feel valued and they want to feel appreciated, and however you can do that in your organization, it really builds confidence, and once they get that confidence, that's when they'll stay with you no matter what they're offered somewhere else.
That's great, Sean. Great insights. And following up on what John said with the theme of the word and I really like that, and it plays well with the what if scenario last night. On our campus, we've had an effort called Building Bridges, and it's just a bridge across differences. And I think what we found is our campus had really lost touch with some of the lower ranking staff on our campus, and it gets at when we send surveys and an expectation that if we email a survey to every employee on the campus to do an engagement survey, that everyone's going to see the email and respond. So we had to go through great lengths to try to make sure that we're talking to the employees, letting them know about these kind of opportunities, translated into like 14 languages, I think, just for the facilities areas alone. And so just making sure that they're not lost in that process and that they feel like they're really part of the team. And so this Building Bridges program has been outstanding. There's been a whole section on immigrant voices where we've given staff release time to go talk in cohorts across campus about their immigrant experiences. It's really been just an opportunity for better engagement of our employees. So with that, I think the microphone is out there, but we're interested to hear other thoughts, best practices on retaining employees.
There was just kind of mentioning. There was an article in last month's APPA magazine. It was written by a guy at Ithaca College that I know, and it was about saying thank you, and that was one of the most powerful things. But trying to encourage across the university more people saying thank you for the everyday things. You know, we always say thank you when we get 3 feet of snow, when we dig everybody out, but it's the day-to-day saying thank you that really has really made a difference. And he wrote a really nice article about that, and I shared that with my supervisors because that's kind of what we've been working on at RIT, is to get that word out. Just say thank you. You don't have to do a lot. Just saying thank you makes a huge difference.
Sure. That's great. Thanks, John. Who else? John wants to throw it. There you go.
Okay.
the University of Vermont. One of the things that I started doing a few years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, meeting with all non-union folks like admin support people, managers, assistant directors, at least twice a year. I put in a calendar for like 3 years out, so every 6 months they know that I'm gonna come around, or they could come to my office and meet one-on-one. And the big thing that I was hearing was a lot of people, especially the supervisors, look up and they see who's gonna die, who's gonna retire, and do I fit in? Okay, and if that position gets plugged with someone from the outside, then everything dies. So I've been trying against other people's wishes. You know, you have other departments you have to deal with, whether it's HR or whatever, to try to promote from within. We've invested in the APA Supervisor Toolkit. We've invested in our own supervisory programs the University of Vermont puts on. We have qualified people. Why not try to utilize the people in-house to move up? You create another slot. So one position, you might create 4 or 5 different moves, and that creates a little bit of excitement, a little bit of, you know, light at the end of the tunnel for other people, but you're fighting some other forces to get this done.
Yeah, and with the younger employees coming in, they want instant gratification, instant change, and use of technology. No one's really brought up use of technology that much, but certainly we're deploying a lot of mobile devices just so that certainly makes people more efficient, but just allowing a technician to have a mobile device that the university is providing is a sense of kind of empowerment, and that we trust them, we think this will make them, more effective, more efficient. Any other thoughts out there on retaining quality employees? Yes, over here.
Intercepted. One thing that we do is we offer kind of formal and then informal flex time. If you want to work 4/10s, okay, you got to fill out the form, get it to me, I'll sign it, and you can work the 4/10s. But the other stuff is that, I suppose I run a kind of a loose ship, but if somebody's been working late and they want to take off at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, it's get out of here. Just go. And it's little things like that that I think people do appreciate. It's not, that in and of itself is not going to make somebody stay at UWM versus go someplace else, but it's got to be part of a pattern. And I think the larger part is you have to be approachable. There was a session earlier about, walking the talk. Well, it literally is walking around, and it's amazing what you can learn from the frontline folks. And when I let it be known that, yeah, come on up, give me your ideas, I was a little apprehensive, thinking that I would be overwhelmed with, well, my idea is that I should be making a lot more money. But it was surprising how little of that I got. And there's some pretty good ideas that were implemented. And I think it helps.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to our third theme here, which is the staff growth and creating a culture of leadership. So starting with you, John, if you want to just talk about what you've been doing on campus to improve staff development, create a culture of leadership and engagement.
Sure. So everybody in this room is running multiple business lines. You've got cost pressures and revenue pressures. You're trying to be the strategic visioning for not just your facilities organization, but in large respects for your universities. Of all of those things, the one that I think is the most important for everybody in this room is to be a leader. And you really can't be a leader unless you're developing that next generation of leaders. And I think it's an area that for a very long time we've not done a very good job at. When you look around at our industry and you see how many times you've had that electrical foreman position got filled with the best electrician, doesn't mean he had any management or she had any management or leadership skills. It just meant they were the best electrician out there. Then they've been given no management or leadership skills or mentoring or even expectations, and then we fire them because they failed in their leadership duties. Or you see that at a higher level of the organization. And I think that's on us, I really do. So we've really taken that on board. We've tried to create a tiered program. And back to the "and" is in our DNA, I don't think it's separate. I think it is all conjoined with the other two topics that we talked about. First, at my senior leadership team level, I found myself having to teach my direct reports mentoring, and although you're not really supposed to force mentoring, I forced mentoring upon them. Not so much because I feel the need to mentor them, but I feel the need for them to want to be good mentors to other people. And since, for the most part, they've never had a mentor, they don't understand it. They know the language, but they've never been a mentee. And so I give them the opportunity first to be a mentee and then to be a mentor for me, with the hope that they'll continue that down through their chain. On the middle level piece, we continue that on a mentor relationship with some of the up and comings, the young engineers and architects, or the young shops, people that really have the aptitude and the desire to get into supervision or management or directorships. And one of the ways we do that, we've got a formal course that we put together called Partners in Learning, and we work with Kellogg Business School, we work with our human resources at the university, but it's primarily a facilities-run course. We take 20 people, and it can be from shops, from project managers, from planners, really from anywhere in the organization. They all go through a 6-month-long program where they meet once a week. We bring in speakers, either from senior leadership positions within the university or from key leaders outside of the academic environment. And there's a theme every week, and those speakers talk about their life experiences along those themes. They have reading material, and they also do a class project together. And at the end of that 6 months, what we found is whether I have a painter in there right now that came through the skilled trades program that I was talking about earlier, or whether I have a director who's been on board the university for 10 years but is new to his director role. They all come away feeling with a completely different understanding of their role as leaders within the organization. Extending it beyond to the rest of the organization, some of the basic skills that I think as leaders, that when we create the culture that is our organization, we've not done a great job. We all do town halls and things like that where we get that 1 hour a quarter to talk to people. But we typically don't do formal training on things. So we've brought in some formal training, and this sounds really hokey, and I thought it was going to be hokey, but it turned out to be fantastic. We actually brought in an acting troupe to teach heart, head, heart, or to listen empathetically, and to be able to not take things personally in the work environment. And so the acting troupe would mock out different things that the team would see or they would encounter. Temperature tech responding to a named researcher who likes to yell a lot. And the whole team got a chance to say stop, and the actors would freeze. And the team would then say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. Not just on the technical side, but make eye contact. Don't walk down the hall using your cell phone. As you're walking down the hall, pay attention to what's going on. And it turned out to be something that I must have gotten about 100 letters from teammates saying, this was the greatest thing I've done in my 40 years at the university. We've done similar classes on how to say no for when somebody wants you to do something that is just not in the best interest of the university. And we found those classes, if we hold the classes about once every 3 months, it continues to get the team engaged. And because it's not the people they normally see that are up in the front of the room, but we're mixed across the room with them, going through the same classes with them, it's really been very impactful for us. So I think you have to hit the whole spectrum. And bottom line, if it's helps move your leadership or helps move your culture, I think it covers all of the things we're talking about with staff development.
Great, thanks, John. Peter.
Tough act to follow. I took a different tact than John. I think it probably is a reflection of probably where our organizations are in terms of development. But where I began was I actually looked at myself. Took more the sense of personal responsibility for my own leadership. and who I am and how do I express that to my organization. Because I felt like if I wasn't going to be truthful about myself to all of the folks that work for the university, how could I really expect them to lead others? So that was a good experience for me, because what that led me to learn is that I felt like I needed to really have all the other people who supervise employees in the organization start to experience the same thing, to let them recognize that they can be themselves and still be leaders. There's not one magical stereotype. There's not the John Wayne or whatever. And if you're not that, then you're never going to lead people. So what I did then, I initiated quarterly meetings with all people in the organization that supervise. The gentleman was mentioning something about meeting with his staff. We actually meet on this quarterly basis solely to talk about leadership and how they develop their teams, what issues they're encountering, and how they can improve themselves. That led to some very interesting outcomes at the moment. One of them is on your tables. Unfortunately, I only had 10 of them, but there's a brochure on your table that this was a program developed completely by the custodial staff. The only input they came to me was saying, are you okay with this? Are we headed in the right direction? Which I was thrilled to see that they were doing this. And it really is a program where they thought how they would develop their own staff who were interested in becoming leaders or supervisors, and what skills it would take for them to make that step. Because we tend to forget, I think your example of an electrician to a foreman is a classic one. You think, well, if they're good in this task, someone will be good in that task. That's one common error I think we make. But the other one is, people in certain areas of the organization, they don't really understand what it is to be a manager, or what the responsibilities are, or how they're expected to behave in a meeting or talk with a customer or whatever. And so we had this really developed in-house. We had our first cohort finish up this year. They're going to graduate in June. The program was so successful that now our central HR is going to be developing it throughout the campus. So we thought that was a really a good way to really begin to drive this culture through the organization. The last thing that we did was I asked every unit to identify 2 people in their organization that they would deem to be their successors. So a director would have to identify 2 people they thought internal candidates who could succeed them. One, they could pick whoever they wanted. The second had to be a diverse candidate, diverse in some fashion, it didn't matter what. And if they didn't have that candidate, I needed to know why. And I said we have to recruit for that candidate. Because that also, I believe, really sends a strong message about leadership, is that we're willing to be a diverse organization and give everybody an opportunity.
Great, wonderful insights, Peter. Sean, you can finish up on the panel on this one.
We do quite a bit the same as John and Peter do. We have leadership programs that go an extensive amount. They go through an application process, get a raise at the end of it. We have one at the division level, and we have one at the president's level, and the goal of those 2 are really to not teach them the skills of the job per se, as time clock management or the HR rules, but to really back them up and allow them to think like supervisors and like leaders when they get into positions. Because a lot of times what we find are skilled trade leadership focuses on time element. Can we get it done, and to what level of quality can we get it done in the time allotted or in the labor force that I have, and they don't step back and they look at the bigger picture of why are they doing what they're doing, and that tends to be a bigger driving force. One real quick wrap-up thing so we can see if there's any questions from the questions or comments is we went back, several years ago we all went through the budget crunch and we collapsed our hierarchy charts and got rid of a lot of the middle level or mid-range management positions. Well, a lot of the information that we're getting visiting with lower level management is there's no upward mobility. So we've kind of gone back and expanded those a little bit. Even if they don't have a lot of differentiation in salaries or responsibilities, but it gives them an optimism that there is an ability to move up. There are options for them out there, and over the next 5 to 10 years as people leave, it kind of gives them a little flexibility to gradually move up to scale, and it's really worked well for us to create that hope and optimism.
Yeah, great, Sean. And Well, let's open it back out to the audience for anything on this subject of creating this culture of engagement and leadership within your organization, but also anything, all things workforce, because we have only a couple minutes left here. Right over here to Andy in the front.
Uh-oh, we're gonna have to relay it.
I mean, one of the advantages I think we have that hasn't been spoken to is we work at large, complex, and diverse places. And I don't know if when you all are saying you've got a training program and this and that, if you're talking within facilities, or is it at the university at large? Because I think if you take advantage of the entire university, there's career paths that jump out of facilities and maybe back. And that may be the right place to direct some of these good, talented young people to get them out of your department for a while. And there's a lot of benefit to that that comes back to you, because we've had some that come back in and they get all kinds of relationships that you don't have in facilities that you can leverage and help. So
One of my proudest moments when somebody that has gone through development within facilities gets recruited away.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the first things I tell people when I'm mentoring them is, if you're honest with me and you tell me what your dreams and desires are, it doesn't have to be within facilities at Northwestern. It doesn't even have to be within Northwestern. My goal is to get you whatever I can to help you progress towards what that goal is. Right. And I would rather then have to come back and compete to make you want to stay here and not chase that goal. But my proudest moments is when somebody gets recruited away because of some leadership skill that
Right.
they have had an opportunity to develop while they're working with me.
And it's not always just within the school yourself. Harvard for me, UMass for you, but we live close to each other. We could trade people too. So think about that. It's a big universe around here that we all, and we tend to see each other a lot, but I think if you broaden the scope.
I just want to know why the Harvard Business School guy has said y'all twice now.
Well, we're down south. This is Texas, y'all, right?
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I think if we build our programs on the culture of we're an education institution, and that's our overall job, whether you're staff, faculty, students, or whatever, we're there to better individuals and let them grow and flourish in whatever their hearts desire.
Other best practice thoughts on workforce. We're down to the last 20 seconds, way over in the corner.
So back to San Francisco again. Our president's got a State of the University address every year, and they always solicit, hey, give me 3 or 4 items that are important that, and normally we had focused on, we upgraded this, we built this, and out of the blue one day I decided I would go a different tack, and I just wrote on the list, and if you could throw a bone to our guys publicly, it would go a long way. And I thought he'd say, yeah, you guys are doing great, and leave it at that. Excuse me. But he actually got up in front of the entire faculty and staff that year and made the comment. He said, the kids who come here more because of the way the landscaping looks, the way the buildings are maintained, the way the infrastructure is, probably more than the fact that they want to study with the eminent Dr. Smith. I mean, that's not our caliber of student, and so it made all of our guys kind of stand a little taller, that they were being recognized by the president for what they do on behalf of the school. So it goes a long way.
Great, absolutely. That kind of recognition from leadership within facilities and the whole campus goes a long way. So we're out of time, but thank you all very much. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the audience for your participation. Great.